Welcome to our deep dive today.
Oh, yeah.
We're exploring some seriously mind-bending stuff.
Mind-bending is right.
The origins of separation, as explained by Wei Watt,
Yeah.
who's riffing on A Course in Miracles.
That's right.
Now, before you think we're about to go full-on philosophy lecture on, think more like magic paintbrushes.
Oh, yeah.
Unexpected detours, and even a Garden of Eden remix.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It's fascinating how the concept of separation isn't about physical distance, but a total misinterpretation of reality.
Oh, wow.
It's like believing we're somehow separate from everything.
Yeah.
Like that one sock that always goes missing in the laundry.
Okay, so that feeling of something's missing,
Yeah.
even when objectively life is pretty good. I
Right.
think we've all been there.
We've all been there.
It's like, if I just had fill in the blank, then I'd be happy trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where Wei Watt's analogy of the magic paintbrush comes in.
Okay.
He asks us to imagine we have a paintbrush
Mm-hmm.
that can literally create anything. Okay.
Dream vacation,
Yeah.
winning lottery ticket,
Uh-huh.
you name it.
Okay, sign me up for that.
Yeah.
Though knowing me, I'd probably misplace it immediately.
Oh, yeah, you would.
But I'm guessing this isn't about literal paint.
Not quite. This brush represents our inherent creative power,
Okay.
the potential we all have to shape our reality. It's
Yeah.
a pretty powerful concept when you think about it.
So we're all walking around with these metaphorical magic paintbrushes,
Yeah.
but instead of creating awesome things, we're using them to cover up perceived emptiness.
Exactly. We try to fill that void with external things.
Uh-huh.
The perfect job, the perfect relationship,
Yeah.
the perfect Instagram feed, instead of recognizing the wholeness that's already within us.
It's like we're trying to fix a leaky faucet
Yeah,
by putting a bucket underneath to catch the drips instead of actually fixing the problem.
that's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And this is where that idea of separation comes in.
Okay.
We become so fixated on what we think is missing.
That we forget we're part of something much bigger, something interconnected.
Okay, so how do we actually go from magic paintbrush to feeling separated?
Right.
We want talks about these 4 steps, right?
It does. It all starts with believing we can change what's already real.
Okay.
Think King Canute, trying to command the tides,
All right.
or trying to argue with the sky to change its color.
Oh, I totally do this. I'm constantly wishing I were taller,
Right.
which last time I checked is not something I have control over.
No, it's not. And it's not just physical things. It's also wishing we had different parents.
Oh,
Wishing our past was different. It's this futile attempt to control what is.
right, like in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
Oh, yeah.
when they try to erase memories.
Right.
It's tempting, but ultimately it's not facing reality.
And that frustration with reality not bending to our will leads us to the second step.
Okay.
Seeing perfection as imperfection. It's like staring at a masterpiece and hyper-focusing on a tiny brushstroke that's off.
Okay, so the classic focusing on the one bad Yelp review
Yes.
instead of the hundreds of good ones scenario.
Exactly. We become so fixated on what we perceive as flaws or shortcomings
Right.
that we miss the bigger picture.
This is where self-criticism runs rampant, right?
Yes.
It's like thinking, if only my nose were smaller,
Yeah.
if only I were more outgoing. It's that constant comparison game.
And that comparison game leads us right into the third step.
Okay.
Distorting creations, including ourselves. We try to force ourselves into molds that don't fit,
Yeah.
trying to be what we think others want us to be.
It's like taking a beautiful, unique mosaic
Yes.
and trying to rearrange the tiles into something generic,
Yeah.
something acceptable.
Yeah.
We lose the individuality that makes us special.
And that brings us to the fourth and final step in this separation saga.
Okay.
Believing we can create ourselves.
Huh.
It's the ultimate illusion, thinking we can just piece together an identity like it's a Build-A-Bear workshop.
So it's like trying to be a completely different person.
Right.
Based on who we're with or what we think will make us more popular.
Precisely, we're constantly seeking external validation.
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing our inherent worth. It's exhausting.
So true. It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of shifting sand.
Yes.
It's never going to feel stable.
Exactly. And this belief that we're somehow separate from everything else,
Right.
that we have to single-handedly construct our own identity,
Yeah.
that's where the fear really kicks in.
So we've gone from happily painting our dream lives to feeling lost and alone.
Yeah.
That escalated quickly.
Well, this is where Wei Watt's decor into fear analogy comes into play.
Okay, so we're feeling lost. We're feeling Scared, cue the existential dread.
Right.
Tell me more about this detour into fear idea.
Okay.
Is this like one of those GPS fails that takes you to the middle of nowhere?
It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Imagine you're on a road trip, cruising along, jamming to your favorite playlist, and then bam, you miss a turn.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're on this unfamiliar back road, lost in the proverbial woods.
Right.
You're stressed, you're annoyed, you just want to get back on track.
Been there. Though usually my wrong turns involve ending up at the wrong Taco Bell.
Oh, yeah.
But I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
The detour doesn't change the destination. It just makes the journey a whole lot more complicated.
Exactly. And that's what this feeling of separation is like. It's a detour, a wrong turn on the map of our perception.
Oh.
We veered off course, but the destination, that sense of wholeness and connection is still there.
So how do we get back on track? Do we need one of those giant fold-out maps like they used to have in gas stations?
Well, the first step is recognizing that we're not actually separate from the source of creation.
Okay.
It's like those optical illusions where you see two different images depending on how you look at it. The image itself doesn't change,
Right.
but your perception of it does.
So it's not about changing reality. It's about changing how we see reality.
Precisely. And this is where A Course in Miracles gets really interesting. It talks about how everything that's truly created shares the same essence as its source.
Okay.
Think of it like a candle lighting another candle. Both candles are now illuminated, but the first candle hasn't lost any of its flame.
Okay, that's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
So it's not like the source of creation is this finite pie and we're all fighting over crumbs.
Right.
It's more like an endless supply of light and love that we can all tap into.
Exactly. And recognizing this interconnectedness is key to finding our way back to that sense of wholeness.
But if we're already connected to this amazing source of everything good,
Right.
why does it feel so hard to access?
Yeah.
Why do we get stuck in these detours of fear and separation?
Well, Watt talks about how we have this tendency to misuse our creative power.
Okay.
Remember that magic paintbrush?
Yeah.
Instead of using it to express our true selves, we often use it to try and control the universe.
So it's like trying to paint over the cracks in a wall instead of actually repairing them.
Yeah.
We're trying to create a facade of perfection instead of dealing with the underlying issues.
Exactly. And this desire to control, to force things to be a certain way,
Right.
That's what leads us further and further down that detour into fear. It's like that saying, wanting to control everything is like trying to hold back the tide with a broom.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work.
Okay, so we need to surrender the broom, so to speak.
Right.
But how does that tie into the whole concept of free will that Watt talks about?
Well, true creation, loving creation can only happen when it's freely given and received.
Okay.
Think of it like giving a gift.
Yeah.
If you try to force someone to accept a gift, it loses its meaning.
So it's like those birthday clowns who shove balloons in your face.
Yes.
Not exactly a heartwarming experience.
Exactly. And when we try to control the creative process, we're essentially attaching strings to the gift.
Right.
We're saying, I'll only create this if it meets my conditions, if it fits into my plan.
Yeah.
And that's not how true creation works.
So we need to let go of the strings, the conditions, the need to micromanage the universe.
Yes.
Easier said than done.
Yes.
But I'm starting to see how this ties into the whole idea of surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And this idea of a pre-separation state where everything is provided for us, where we're completely connected to the source.
Okay.
This might remind you of another story.
Are we talking about the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, forbidden fruit, the whole 9 yards?
Precisely. Watt uses this analogy to illustrate how we fell from this state of grace, this awareness of our inherent wholeness.
Okay.
Think of the Garden of Eden as representing that pre-separation state of perfect harmony and abundance. All our needs are met. There's no sense of lack or fear. It's pure bliss.
Okay. I could definitely get on board with that.
Yeah.
Sign me up for a lifetime membership to the Garden of Eden.
Right.
But how did we end up getting kicked out?
Well, remember the serpent?
Yeah.
That sly whispering voice of doubt and temptation?
Yeah, the original bad influencer. What does the serpent represent in this context?
The serpent represents that false idea of lack, that belief that we're somehow incomplete or separated from the source. And when we buy into that lie, it's like falling asleep, slipping into a dream where everything seems out of whack.
So it's like we've been hypnotized by this idea of separation.
Right.
And we've forgotten who we really are. We're walking around in a daze, bumping into things, wondering why everything feels so off.
Exactly. And we keep projecting these misperceptions outward,
Yeah.
perpetuating the dream, so to speak.
Okay, so we're all stuck in this collective nightmare. How do we wake up? Is there a metaphorical alarm clock we can set?
Well, the good news is that we have the power to choose to awaken, just like snapping out of a bad dream.
Yeah.
We can simply choose to stop believing in what's not true.
Okay.
We can choose to see through the illusion of separation and recognize our inherent wholeness.
But that sounds easier said than done. How do we actually make that choice?
Right.
How do we go from feeling lost and alone to experiencing that sense of wholeness and connection?
That's where it gets really interesting. We have to start by recognizing those misperceptions,
Okay.
those steps of misbelief that we talked about earlier. We have to become aware of how we're using our creative power
Yeah.
to try and control things, how we're distorting ourselves and our reality to fit into some external standard.
So it's about becoming more mindful of our thoughts and actions, about questioning those limiting beliefs
Yeah.
that keep us trapped in this cycle of fear and separation, kind of like doing a mental Marie Kondo cleanse.
Exactly. Reawakening is about reclaiming our natural ability to create and extend what is good and perfect.
Okay.
It's about reconnecting with that spark of creativity and joy that's our birthright.
Yeah.
It's about realizing that we're not broken, we're not lacking, we're not separate, we're already whole and complete just as we are.
This is all incredibly empowering.
Yeah,
But I have to admit, fear still feels like a pretty big obstacle.
right.
How do we overcome that fear that seems to be so deeply ingrained in this illusion of separation?
That's a great question. And the key to overcoming fear is understanding where it comes from. Remember, fear arises from that false belief that we could somehow control the universe's creative power and make it our own.
Okay, so back to that holding back the tide with a broom analogy.
Yes.
It's like trying to capture lightning in a bottle. It's just not possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And realizing that is incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It means nothing has gone wrong in reality. It's just our perception that's off kilter.
So it's like we're having a nightmare and fear is just part of the dream.
Mm-hmm.
But when we wake up, we realize it was never real.
Precisely. Waiwat compares fear to a nightmare that vanishes when we wake up to the light of understanding.
So how do we turn on the light, so to speak?
Right.
How do we access that understanding that dissolves fear?
That's where the power of miracles comes in. Think of a miracle as a kind of cosmic control plus alt plus delete for your perception.
Okay.
It's like hitting the reset button on a glitching computer, clearing out all the errors and bringing things back into alignment.
Okay, so less about parting the Red Sea, more about rebooting our brain to factory settings.
Right.
I like it. But what does that actually look like in real life?
Well, in A Course in Miracles, a miracle is simply a shift in perception.
Yeah.
It's a moment of clarity where we see through the fog of fear and ego
Yeah.
and recognize things as they truly are.
So it's not about some grand supernatural event.
Right.
It's more about those subtle but profound moments where things just click into place and we see the world with fresh eyes.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that miracles are available to everyone all the time.
Oh, wow.
It's not like there's a limited supply and you have to be extra holy to qualify.
Right.
It's about being open to a different way of seeing things.
Okay, so we're all walking around with the potential for miracles,
Mm-hmm.
but how do we actually tap into that power?
Yeah.
Is there a secret handshake or a special chant we need to learn?
Well, it starts with recognizing those moments when fear is clouding our perception.
Okay.
Think about those times when you're spiraling into worry, doubt, or self-criticism. That's your cue to hit the pause button.
Uh-huh.
And ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Is this perception aligned with truth?
So it's about becoming aware of those mental patterns that keep us stuck in that separation loop.
Right.
It's like those "you are now leaving the comfort zone" signs you see on hiking trails.
Oh, yeah.
It's a signal to pay attention,
Uh-huh.
to be mindful of where we're directing our energy.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when we start to question those fear-based thoughts,
Yeah.
when we choose to see things from a more loving and compassionate perspective, that's when miracles start to happen. It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books.
Okay.
We have the power to direct the narrative to choose a different outcome.
This is all making a lot of sense, but I have to admit, sometimes it feels like fear has this vice grip on my brain.
Right.
It's like those inflatable car dealership tube guys.
Yeah.
It just keeps popping back up no matter how many times I try to knock it down. How do we deal with that persistent fear?
Remember, fear is ultimately an illusion. It stems from that false belief that we're somehow separate from the source of love and wholeness.
Yeah.
It's like those horror movies where the monster turns out to be just a guy in a mask.
Yeah.
Once you see through the facade, it loses its power.
Okay, so fear is basically a cosmic prank show.
Right.
We're being scared by shadows and smoke machines.
Exactly. And when we recognize that,
Yeah.
when we remember that we're not alone, that we're connected to this infinite source of love and power, fear starts to melt away. It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. The shadows disappear and we can see clearly again.
This whole conversation has been like a giant light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
But we haven't talked much about inner peace yet.
Right.
How does that fit into all of this?
Inner peace is the natural result of remembering who we truly are.
Okay.
It's not something we have to strive for or earn. It's our birthright.
Yeah.
It's always there underneath all the mental noise and fear-based stories we tell ourselves.
So it's like we're carrying around this treasure chest filled with inner peace, but we've forgotten the combination to unlock it.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And the key to unlocking that treasure chest is simply letting go of the illusion of separation.
Yeah.
When we stop identifying with the ego with that small, limited sense of self,
Right.
we naturally tap into that wellspring of peace that's always been within us.
It's like finally taking off those shoes that have been pinching your feet all day.
Oh,
Relief.
exactly. And the more we practice aligning with truth, the more we choose love over fear, the more we experience that deep, abiding inner peace.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
We've covered so much ground.
Mm.
From magic paintbrushes to fear-induced detours to cosmic Control plus Alt plus delete buttons.
Yeah.
But what does this all mean for our listeners out there trying to navigate the ups and downs
Yeah.
of everyday life? What's the big takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway is that separation is an illusion. We are not alone. We are not broken. We are not lacking. We are all connected to this incredible source of love and wholeness. And when we remember that, when we choose to see through the lens of love and forgiveness, we open ourselves up to a world of miracles and inner peace.
It's like we've been handed the keys to the kingdom, but we've been too busy looking down at our feet to notice.
Right.
We have the power to choose a different experience, a more joyful and fulfilling way of being.
Exactly. And it all starts with that simple shift in perception.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the magic paintbrush we all have within us
Okay.
and using it to create a reality that's aligned with love, truth, and our inherent wholeness.
This has been such an inspiring and thought-provoking conversation. I know I'll be pondering these ideas for a long time to come.
Me too. It's a journey of continuous discovery.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to explore these concepts further. Check out Wei Watt's work. Dive into A Course in Miracles. And most importantly, start paying attention to those moments when fear tries to take the wheel. Remember, you have the power to choose a different path. A path that leads you back to the wholeness and connection that is your birthright. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.